Okay, we are almost there. Okay, so the data is correct. And okay, copy that. Operation is complete. So here is your CTB bag. And as we have already agreed, the final procedures are going to be completed on the 31st. Okay. Okay. We do need an instructor for pool or for chess. So we have only 5 or 10 minutes for the press, for the media. Okay, we are playing out a very complicated combination here. Okay, Alexander. Here is Ron coming. Okay, your eyes closed. Rotation. Alexander, what are you feeling now? And what are you listening to? I'm listening to relaxing music. And what about your flight engineer? So the first in line is actually the prime crew. Okay, so go ahead. Turn to your little grove, to the trees. And where are they? Over there. Okay, shoot whatever you want, whatever you need to. You'd better keep silent here. Okay, so here are our trees. So do we have an instructor to help on how to plant trees? The tree was planted by Samakutyayev, Alexander Mikhailovich, Russia. Keep your head up a little bit. The tree was planted by Garen, United States, 2011.
I think it's a wonderful tradition, and it's a great honor to be a part of it.
Why the space program is not integrated? Why we are not able to work together for one goal?
Well, we are an integrated space program, but each nation has to fund its own parts of the space program. So each partner in our international partnership has to answer to their own people, their own government. So that part of it is separate because that's where the money comes from. But together is, we are building the space station, we are conducting the research and the science on board the space station. So the program itself is all integrated in together. It's just where the funding comes from different places that require us to have separate programs.
Okay. Программа объединения.
And I think that we are very, very close to this thrilling moment, and the next step would be actually getting into our seats and flying. Alexander Mikhailovich, you will be on board of the ISS among one of the most well-known people who actually flew into space, and there will be one very memorable date, the flight of Yuri Gagarin into space. And what do you think about it, and how do you feel about flying on such an important date? And the name of Gagarin is a legend. It's not only a legend of the Soviet nation, but the legend of the whole world. This man showed to all of us the way into space that we had not known before. And I'm sure that some part of our, after some time, we will lose the names of generals and presidents will be wiped off the boards of history, but Gagarin will be there. The launch of Gagarin was a very bold step for Korolev, constructor and scientist. So was it risky? As far as I know, Sergei Korolev was an enthusiast of his job, and he required a lot from the people who worked with him, and he put up great standards for him and his work. So I think it was a great deed for him, and we know how difficult it was for him to launch a man into space. And it was done for the first time. The launch of Yuri Gagarin happened during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. So it actually opened a way to the international partnership. What do you think about that? I wouldn't call it the Cold War, use it now. I would probably call it in a more simpler way. It was competition, and it's a more modern word. And I think that the notion of the Cold War, in a way, actually gave a push to the development of human space exploration, not only in the United States, but also in the Soviet Union and around the world. So, have you ever dreamt that Russia and the United States are going to be working shoulder to shoulder as it is happening now within the framework of partnership on this program? Well, I think sooner or later everybody becomes friends. And of course we argue sometimes like neighbors, but now we are working perfectly together, and our American colleagues and us, we feel at ease at NASA grounds with NASA instructors, and I hope the same works for our colleagues from the States. Yuri Gagarin is praised as a national symbol and hero in Russia. Is that so? I think that Yuri Gagarin is our countryman, and every boy is proud of him being the first man in space, and that he was a Soviet citizen and came from a simple Russian village. For Americans, John Glenn and Neil Armstrong were their heroes. Was Yuri Gagarin your hero when you were training for this mission? Well, I think I would say that my parents are the ones who told me about Yuri Gagarin, because I was born much later after the flight, but my parents told me about that, and they would just walk on the street and listen to the radio news that were hanging on telephone poles or on TV when the newsreaders were telling us about this man, and that's how he became part of every family in our country. And probably that was my inspiration, and I think I felt the same as my parents did. So you will be crammed in a small vehicle, living with 6 other people. Would you say that Yuri Gagarin ever knew that in a couple of years people would be walking on the moon and living on the International Space Station? Well, I think it's a due course of events. The first flight was carried out 50 years ago, and we were building up our potential and momentum, our experience and capabilities. We can increase the number of people on the ISS up to 6, and also the shuttle is docking to the station, and there is a large amount of people on board on the ISS, and I think in 50 years it will develop even more. And in conclusion, you are the flight commander for the vehicle named Yuri Gagarin. Do you feel proud about it, because it actually links to the history of space exploration? Of course, I do feel responsible. This year is extremely important, and we are very close to this historic date, the 12th of April, 1961, and we're just a couple of days away from this day. So, and we will be launched from the same launching pad as Yuri Gagarin. So, of course, all humankind is looking at us, and it's a great responsibility. And of course, we are extremely proud that we were entrusted by our leadership with this mission. Thank you very much. Andrei, you will be on board of the ISS during one of the most important events in the history of space exploration, namely the 12th of April, the 50 years since the first human made his way into space. What do you think is the meaning of this flight? Well, you put it rightly. It was an extremely important historical moment in the history of the humankind. It was actually the first time the human made his way into space, and it's hard to overestimate it. it's a new epoch in space exploration. Looking back on how difficult and audacious this step was for space exploration, how difficult it was for Korolev, and how much it influenced the development of the space program in the Soviet Union. What do you think about that? I think at that moment, every single launch was a challenge for Korolev, and launching Gagarin into space was one of them. And as far as I know, when Gagarin was launched, neither Sergei Korolev nor the people working with him never thought of what a great effect it would have on the history of space exploration. For them, it was just an ordinary mission. So Gagarin was sent to space right in the midst of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the USA. So what do you think happened to actually make our international cooperation possible? Well, I wouldn't say that the Cold War began not when Gagarin was launched. So I would say that it was just one step in the development of space exploration. Why is Gagarin so respected and also praised as the national hero and symbol of the country? I think that sending the first human into space was thrilling, and it was just the same as the Victory Day in the Second World War for the Soviets. And that's why it had such a great influence on the Soviet citizens. And not only there, but all around the world. So I wouldn't say that Yuri Alexeyevich is anything less than a historic symbol of our country. So you will be crammed in a little vehicle living with 6 other people. Could anybody predict that Gagarin's flight would actually lead to this cooperation, to the creation of the ISS? Well, after the launch of Gagarin, Korolev said that in a couple of years, people would be able to buy tours into space. So you will be in orbit during the festivities linked to the 50-year anniversary of Gagarin's flight. What do you think about that? Well, it's kind of difficult to say what I'm going to feel about this moment because it hasn't come yet. But now I feel great responsibility for carrying out all tasks that were given to me and get an A. Well, the launch of your vehicle is going to take place as it happened with other vehicles from the same launching pad as Gagarin's vehicle. Do you feel how close to the history you are and how inspiring is it? Of course, everything at Baikonur is linked with the history of space exploration, and it's hard not to feel this connection. Thank you. You're most welcome.
Ron, you'll be on board the International Space Station for some of the most widely recognized and celebrated anniversaries in spaceflight history. Most notable will be on April 12th, the 50th anniversary of the launching of Yuri Gagarin aboard Vostok 1 as the first human in space. Your thoughts on the significance of Gagarin's flight and what it meant as a historic moment that enabled us to leave our planet?
Yeah. Well, that was a very, very historic moment. You know, I think on that day, the day that Yuri launched into space, we became a different species. You know, we were a species that, you know, made this giant leap in evolution where we were no longer confined to the boundaries of our planet, and, you know, we on that day, we became a species who, did not need to be a single planet species anymore. So that really changed it. And I think it was, a very, very historic moment, and really, set the stage for a lot of things to come.
So in retrospect, how bold and challenging do you think it must have been for Sergei Korolev, the great designer, to launch Gagarin, knowing the prestige of the Soviet Union rode on that rocket's success or failure?
Yeah, I think it was big. I think, Sergei Korolev had a very, very interesting story. He spent 6 years in prison and labor camps, and then for something he didn't do, and was later cleared from. And he was secret. His very name was secret for many, many years. And the whole idea of sending first a satellite into orbit, then a dog, and then finally a man. That was that all came from him, from this man. I mean, he had a whole big team of people, but he was the genius behind that. He was the visionary behind that, and so it was a very, very bold move, and that really set the stage for everything to come. And it was we owe a lot to him. And if you think about it, though, those rockets started out being designed for military purposes, and through this first step of sending a human into space, we saw that they could be used for peaceful purposes as well. And so it was really the first use of these rockets for peaceful purposes.
Gagarin's launch occurred at the height of the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. What impact did that have in forging the space race and ultimately providing the path that led to the international cooperation in space we are conducting today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. 50 years ago, one nation launched one man into space, and it was for the pride of that nation. And our crew, today, we represent the whole partnership of nations that make up the International Space Station. And so, it's a great honor to be a part of that transition from being a competition, an antagonistic competition, to this cooperation. And I think it's a really, it enables us to do much, much more than we would be able to do on our own. If we think back to the Columbia tragedy, all the partners stood by us, or the Russians stood by us, everybody stood by us. And that's what the strength of an international partnership is that we are with each other, we support each other in the good times and the bad times. And now, we all stand with our international partners and stand with our partners from Japan while they deal with the tragedy that they're dealing with during the earthquake, which affected a lot of the space operations there. So, I think we can accomplish much, much more working together than any nation can do on its own. And I think that transition has been really important. That's really, I'm really proud and honored to be a part of it.
Now, as a retired Air Force colonel, could you have ever envisioned the U.S. and Russia working hand in hand as we are today on the ISS, a partnership born out of Gagarin's launch?
Yeah, that it is still a little surrealistic to be sitting here in this place that was once top secret and wasn't even on the map, to where we are today, and to see this rocket that's being that's honoring Yuri Gagarin and honoring this first launch with his picture and his name on the rocket, and then to see a Russian flag and an American flag on the same rocket, it's really amazing, and it really. It warms my heart. I mean, I think this is something that, I didn't think, I hoped would happen someday, but I never really thought it would happen as fast as it happened, and I think it's wonderful.
Why is Gagarin not only honored but revered in Russia 50 years later as a national hero and an icon?
Well, like all great explorers, he did something that had never been done before. And I'm pretty sure that he didn't know if he was going to be successful and he would be returning back alive. And so, he made, a very, very big sacrifice. He took a very, very big risk, and he did it because, I'm sure, he thought that there was going to be, a big benefit for doing that, a benefit for all mankind. And so, he rightly is viewed as a hero. And he's not just a hero for Russia, he's a hero for the whole world. Because, what he did enabled all of us to do what we're doing today.
So from one orbit of the Earth in a small capsule to a half a dozen people living and working in space aboard the International Space Station, could anyone have forecast how Gagarin's flight would have led just 8 years later to Americans walking on the moon and then to today and the research and science being conducted on the ISS?
Yeah, you know, looking back, sending men to the moon as fast as we did, to this day, I don't know how they did it. Those guys, that whole team of people that did that in that program were giants. And what they did, I think, is prove that we can do whatever we set our mind to. As long as we are committed to do it, we're determined, we're motivated, we can do whatever, we have the ability to do whatever we set our mind to. And so, I think that's really a motivating thing for me. And what that has led to, as you said, is 6 people, from different nations living on board the space station. We've had a continuous presence on the International Space Station since the year 2000. And, now that the station is 99% built and it's being utilized for what it was designed for, and that's an orbiting laboratory, we're starting to see some of the payback on our investment. We're starting to see a lot of the science, a lot of the discoveries that are being made. And these discoveries and this research is not just to help us to go further in space exploration. We are doing significant research to help problems, help challenges, help solve challenges and problems that we face on the Earth. And it's really very rewarding to be a part of that research.
So, Ron, what will it be like for you personally to be on orbit on the 50th anniversary of Gagarin's achievement?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. When I was a kid, I had an interest not only in the U.S. space program, I had an interest in the Russian space program as well. And the reason for that is because of a story that my grandfather would tell us when we were kids. And I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive that this story is not true. But as a kid, I really believed that it was true. And so the story is that when my grandfather's father, my great-grandfather, immigrated to the U.S. from Russia, and it was at Ellis Island, his name was Ivan Gagarin, and that he thought that didn't sound American enough, so he changed it to John Gagarin. And then the story goes on, my grandfather went on to say, and we're, of course, related to Yuri Gagarin. So I really thought as a kid that there was some kind of family connection with Yuri Gagarin. Now, it's not true. I'm sure it's not true. It's just a story. But, I had that interest as a little kid. And it's funny because Alexander Salmakotaev, growing up was called Little Yuri too, and now he's the commander of a Soyuz on the pretty close to the 50th anniversary. So it's a pretty interesting experience. So it'll be obviously it'll be a great honor to be celebrating in space during that anniversary. It's a very significant event, and I can't think of a better place to celebrate it than on orbit.
I'm sure Rob would probably come up with a second question based on that story. I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just 3 weeks after Gagarin's flight, a Navy test pilot named Alan Shepard became the first American to fly in space. What significance do you believe the launch of Freedom 7 and Shepard had in getting the U.S. back in the game as Project Mercury and this nation's human spaceflight program began?
Yeah, well, that's another anniversary that we're going to get to celebrate, and that was a big step for our nation. I mean, that obviously was our first step into space, and that first step set the stage for everything that happened after, which included going to the moon, landing on the moon, and then now the space station. And so, that was a big step, and one that we should celebrate.
So coincidentally, 20 years to the day after Gagarin's launch came the maiden flight of the Space Shuttle Columbia to inaugurate the Space Shuttle era. Discuss the impact the shuttle has had on human spaceflight through this years, and your thoughts on the retirement of the shuttle and the impact that will have in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very, very bold mission, a very daring mission, and we talked about a first. That was another first, and John Young and Bob Crippen flying that mission was just amazing, and the history of the space shuttle since then has been absolutely remarkable, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be many, hopefully not that many, but it's going to be a while, probably a few decades at least before we have the capability that the space shuttle provided us. And, the amount of things that the space shuttle had put in orbit, the construction of the space station, the Hubble Space Telescope, servicing the Hubble Space Telescope, all those things would not be possible if we didn't have the space shuttle. And, we're going to hopefully take that next step, and we're going to be designing new vehicles to take its place. But, it's going to be, we're going to miss the space shuttle until we have that capability back, and it's going to be a while, unfortunately.
So finally, your launch to the ISS, as have all other human space launches from the Baikonur cosmonaut, occurs off the same launch pad from which Gagarin's launch occurred.
Yeah.
Do you feel a sense of history in Baikonur, sort of pioneering honor that is a source of inspiration for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's surrealistic to think that, 50 years ago, from that very spot, Yuri Gagarin launched, and we're going to be strapped to that rocket on the same pad, and very, very close to that day. It's just going to be a great honor, and words can't even describe, how thrilling that is to be associated with that, to have our mission, coincidentally, be associated with this great historic event.
Thanks, Ron.
Good morning. Okay, once again, another picture. So now wave your hand to us. Okay, guys. Andrei. Okay, I look here, there, and over there, and everywhere.
Ron?
– 50 years since Gagarin's flight to space. Guys, how was your training? How was your final training? And the close-ups. Thank you very much. We do not have any more questions. They were all answered. Thank you so much. We do not have any concerns or comments. Thank you. Have you checked all the seat liners and kits? Yes, everything's fine. Everything's perfect. Well, we looked at the launching vehicle. Everything's ready. Thank you so much. Everything's fine. Do you have any questions, requests? So you don't have any questions. You're feeling fine. Well, we'll see you soon for the commission at the launching pad. And as for the secondary crew, you have seen everything. And good luck and goodbye. Thank you. Look at this beauty. The picture can be all together or and then separately, the prime and the secondary crew. Okay, look at us, please. And now the secondary crew. Good luck to you guys. Good luck. Thank you. Well, we would like to show how rich and diverse is the land of Kazakhstan. And why did we choose this site for the launching pad? And of course, when he arrived at Baikonur and he saw the rocket that was to be created, today it's difficult to imagine that Cosmodrome Baikonur actually began here in this little construction lot. And today, from the first little part of from the first construction site, we actually expanded in a very short period of time. And of course, we are smiling now when we're looking at this piece of equipment, which weighs several tons. But in 10 years, this unique piece of equipment that was made in Penza showed that it is capable of working. And then in the 60s, we were sending these vehicles into space with several dogs, and that's how we actually proved that living beings are capable of traveling into space. So we sent a tape recorder for the recording to space, and then we were sending animals, but then after that Korolev said that it was time to send a man into space, and that's when they actually decided to send a human being into space, Yuri Gagarin. I'm not going to tell you about this piece of equipment. You probably just had your training, but this exhibit is new, and I hope that you will bring us your own stories about space exploration. And now, our tradition, your autograph. That's where all the crews were putting and have been putting their signatures. Samakutyayev. Borisenko, the 31st of March 2011. Ron Garan.
Stay here. Thank you.
Okay, the secondary crew, please take your seats. With great pride, I would like to say that there is only one museum like ours where we collect bit by bit the history of the Baikonur Cosmodrome. And when we actually got Evening Moscow, Вечерняя Москва newspaper from 1961, and when we got this, we were elated. So I would like to leave this suit in this museum, and I hope that you will leave something for it too. So thank you very much. Could you sign it here? Pavel Vladimirovich Vinogradov, thank you so much for this gift. Our dearest crew members, we prepared gift for you as well. We will remember every single one of them, of you. And if you could, a picture with all of you. Look at me. Training center for cosmonauts. 27th expedition crew reporting. Crew commander, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Samakudayev. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, ready? Okay, get in, get in. Okay, check the valve. How's the
Так, пресса, давайте по-быстрому.
Okay, media,
Уходим, уходим, уходим.
get everything done quickly because the crew does not have fans working right now.
Так, давайте по-быстрому. Сейчас мокрые будут. Спасибо. Спасибо. Да, вот так вот сейчас.
Okay, be careful.
Все отлично.
Watch out. Okay, and get inside. Everything's okay. Gagarin. 50 years of space exploration. We are raising the flags. Could you please turn to us? All together.